Jane McCall and the Twilight Stacks. Chapter 16. The Attack. That should have been the end of the flashback. Jane was aware enough of her present state, kneeling on the floor of the stacks in front of the armchair, to expect the flow of memories to cut off as all of hers were restored. Instead, there was a shift. The best way she could describe it would be sideways. A hitch had part of her staggering, and the brief moment of imbalance was sufficient for her to slide into another river from the past. They watched through many carvings' eyes. The perspective wasn't as disorienting as it should have been, as the bright little black-blue-green light, a layer above what Jane could see as herself, half transparent but more real than the physical plane, in Dear Jane left them for the last time, as all little lights did. This one might return, but they knew better than to hope. Just because this light had color and gave them a voice, that didn't mean the dear one would remember them after blooming into witchhood. It knew Jane would be a witch someday. Oh, that stung! Those memories would be taken away or buried by the turn of the day. Only a stroke of impossible luck would bring this particular light back. They settled in around the core tucked safely on a shelf in the back, putting aside a pinch of wistfulness at the loss of their ability to communicate. They had learned and received so very much from the Almost a Witch, had taught Jane so very much in return. Not that they were lonely, it had never been capable of feeling such a thing, but the ability to reach out to a light instead of merely inviting them in was a luxury. They indulged their nature as it had since it had manifested, nurturing and guiding the little lights which found them. There were never many, although most returned at least once. They shifted their configuration as they pleased and whisked the right books in and out as the lights needed. It was more comfortable in its body than Jane had been in hers in months. The feeling bled through and smothered the bit of her that couldn't cope with the shift. Time passed smoothly and calmly, in a monotony that didn't grate. It had no capability to feel boredom, until another colored light stepped inside them. This one was wrong. Sickly brown and red and yellow tangled together in a messy, destructive configuration. The light was bright enough to blot out the face beneath, a magnitude of power only possible if a way had bound to the witch. They were alarmed. Caroline loomed large in the back of Jane's mind, but reached out regardless. A touch to the witch's power granted them words and insight. Anger, disease, wrought, pathetic way, no one will miss it, powerless, death, hate, hate, hate! They tried to retreat, but the foreign magic latched on. It sought their center. They almost managed to scream. Jane did, contorting their carvings into rictuses of terror and slamming shelves together to form a barricade. They had to get this monster to leave before a little light came in and got hurt. Before they got hurt. Every title on every book rearranged to spell "Get out!" The monster said, "Decay anything trying to impede me," and waved a hand. A solar flare of magic lashed out. Wherever it touched, the shelves grew brittle and the books crumbled. Jane screamed again, a pained pitch this time. They whisked the damaged shelves to the side and replaced them, suppressed the invading magic, and threw books at the invader's head. It had no nerves. It could not feel pain. The new shelves rotted and the thrown books disintegrated before they even got close. The invader walked closer to their core step by step. Their counterattacks grew more frantic. A spell like that couldn't last long, not even with a way's support. They just had to hold out until the wicked witch shoved a final shelf over. It hit the wall shelving behind it with a jittering crash and fell to pieces. She reached out and tore their core off the shelf. They were rent in two. Jane's heart was torn from her chest. They flung books and shelving units in all directions in a last-ditch reflex to keep their core inside. It could put the core back so long as it remained within its sphere of influence. The wicked witch tossed her hair as though bored. How dare she? How dare she? Jane hated her, and started to walk away. This was their last chance. They paused for a split second, breaking the rhythm of their assault. She took a step forward, and a half-ruined shelving unit slammed into her. Her spell had weakened enough that even though the shelf took damage, most of its mass caught her in the shoulder. She went flying back and landed hard on a pile of books. Their core was still in her hands. They shook their whole body, trying to get her to let go. It was getting difficult for her to think. The idea didn't work. She sat up with a hiss, cradling her damaged side. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. The writing on the pages around her twisted. "You are an invader and a thief. Return that which does not belong to you, and I will let you leave." It often taught the little lights about forgiveness and had taken its own lessons to heart. She growled and shoved herself to one knee. "Sicken and die slowly!" she screamed, and slammed her palm into the ground. The spell was a rolling explosion of power. They lost sight of her in the blast, but felt the tether snap when their core was taken out of them. She was gone. They should have died instantly. An improperly separated core could generate a new incarnation if properly nurtured, but it would not be the same. Instead, they continued to live, but they started to crumble and weaken. The spell intended to torment them was saving their life. Despite that, they didn't have infinite time and couldn't do anything without help. Jane cried out as she was shoved back into her body. Queries, kudos, or concerns? Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.